Lucky Boys Podcast.
It's like the irreversible loss.
Yeah. And so it's definitely it's going to continue, right? I mean, there's going to be more businesses that close, and I think we all recognize that, and it's already devastating. But I think what's great about this is that there's also been a lot of community support that's been coming on. So it's not just Welcome to Chinatown, right? There's other initiatives of Asian Americans that are really trying to help Chinatown and support Chinatown. And so hopefully we see we see more pop up, and we see more people trying to lend a hand.
During this time, this is what I'm hearing constantly. It's the people. It's the people. It's people like you guys. It's the community. Am I missing something? Because where are the elected officials?
Ooh, this is about to get juicy.
The people that were elected to put in office, the so-called leaders.
Yep.
The people that we look to.
Yeah.
And entrust, and we listened to them while they were campaigning. Mm-hmm. and made their pitch on how they were going to help the community. And during times like this, all I see is photo ops.
Yep.
And that's as far as I'm going to keep it real.
Yeah. And, Chinatown is never going to be able to get as much credit as it deserves for everything it has given to New York City. It is a major driver for tourism. If you think about pre-COVID times and the foot traffic that it brought in, it's a historical enclave for Chinese Americans, for Asian Americans. It's incredibly iconic. And so it's been interesting to see the response or lack thereof.
Right. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because they don't look at us as a minority group? That when it comes to things like this, we are considered like white people? I believe there was a state or even some companies when they look for diversity inclusion, people that look like us are not a part of that goal in terms of diversity or inclusion. Well, you're women, so you would be a part of it. But in general, if they're looking for diversity or people of color, generally there's in colleges, in high schools, or even locally around here, and places of work in certain states where they don't consider Asian Americans minorities, which blows my mind.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much to unpack because there's so many layers and like parts about this. I think I guess I'll start with one point where Asians being not seen as minorities. I'm trying to figure out how I want to like construct this, but I think it's because a lot of it in our culture too, we don't like asking for help. We don't like to get handouts, and we don't like to lift up our voices, amplify our own voices of the needs that we need. So I think that's something that we're trying to change as a Welcome to Chinatown organization, where we help give a voice to the people who think that they don't have a voice. I always remember, my growing up, my parents were like, just keep your head down, let your work speak for itself, like respect your elders, don't challenge your elders. And I took that approach very seriously into my professional career too. And I realized that was actually a detriment to how I climbed up the ladder, whatever you want to call that, at work, where I really did have to change my mentality of I should speak up, and I shouldn't be the stereotype that is imposed on Asian women of being quiet and submissive. So that was really empowering for myself as an Asian American woman. And that's why I used that and translated that into the work that I do and what I contribute to for Welcome to Chinatown, because we find so many Asian American or Asian business owners who are like me, who are like, let me just keep my head down and work, and I'm sure I'll pull through. But we shouldn't let our pride get in the way of asking for help. So I think that's one thing. The other thing about, Asians not being seen as minorities, is complex, right? Because I think we as an organization, for myself specifically, have also been reflecting about allyship in the context of Black Lives Matter. I work at a tech company, and the tech world has its own set of problems about representation, especially for Black, Latinx, or Hispanic or Indigenous employees. And so at the same time, I recognize my own set of privileges as being Asian. And I think that, that's where I think like for Asian Americans, we have different sets of needs and challenges that are different that we can still set aside and be active allies for Black communities, for Latinx communities, Indigenous communities. So, it's there's so many layers to it. I don't think there's like a one size fit all answer. And I'm probably rambling at this
No,
point.
I think just I don't want to oversimplify, but just look at history, right?
Yeah.
Look at history where Chinese Americans were back in the 1800s, 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
We were lynched.
Yeah.
Chinatowns were destroyed. Chinatown communities were destroyed, by Irish immigrants because the powers that be, didn't have enough funds to hire Irish immigrants for work.
Mm-hmm.
And so they went with the cheaper option, the
Mm-hmm.
Chinese laborers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and don't forget about the Civil Rights Movement.
Yeah.
Chinese
Exclusion
Asians,
Act. Yeah.
Chinese Exclusion Act, Chinese people were part of the Civil Rights Movement as well. People forget that.
Yeah.
And I think when they say like, when people have a judgment and say, because the judgment and say like, using this term white adjacent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Chinese are not POCs.
Yeah.
Well, just look at history.
Yeah.
It's been there. It's there. It's written down.
Yeah.
You just have to look.
That's the thing is like, are we being ignored? Yes, we definitely are. And I don't know why. I wish I knew why. I think it's because of just like the rhetoric that has followed us all the way throughout history. That's why I feel more empowered today to use my voice, use whatever platform I may have to speak of what has actually happened in history and let it be known. We've spent far too long doing ourselves, I think, a disservice of not speaking up more about the things that we have been through as Asian Americans. And I think it's been really inspiring actually to see a lot of it, like when we're going back to your original question, Will, about like the people who are, stepping up and stepping in. I've seen more Asian Americans today who are really trying to elevate that narrative of what it means to be Asian in America.
Yeah. But I think, and going back to your original question about kind of where are our elected officials, and sometimes I'm curious, is it because they're not making enough noise? Like, do they not have the right networks in the right places to make that, you know what I mean? Like, is there no one important that they're vying for? And it's a great question. Like, with that, I wish I knew the answer to too. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, are they out of creative ideas? Like, do they not know what to do? And I think this is where the people that are rising up, they're getting creative, right? And they're taking it upon themselves to do stuff. And I wonder if that our elected officials are just missing that sense of motivation, I guess I would say, or just making more noise, because I think they're staying quiet. Yeah. And whoever they report to, they're just not making enough noise and being impactful when they should be.
You're absolutely right in the sense of there's just so many layers to it. But part one, we do have to speak up.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, if you want to be heard, you need, in America, at least on this side of the world, the squeaky wheel gets the grease,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I guess in the other side of the world, the nail that sticks out gets the hammer. I mean, we've all heard of that before. As far as the elected officials go, I think one is, does that community's vote matter? Will they swing the numbers? Mm-hmm. What impact will this community have on me?
Yeah. Yep.
And if the Chinatown community makes up a small percentage of those numbers, then I'm not going to focus on the little fish. Mm-hmm. I'm going to look at my whales. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to focus on my big communities.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going to focus my time and energy, because those are the communities that, number one, are probably much louder. And if we don't do what we say, they're going to lash us and go crazy on social media on us. And we don't want that problem.
Yeah.
And those ratings to go down. So we're going to focus on this community.
Yeah. And
I think when it comes down to it, I think that's it. I think that's really it. So I think they're going to think Chinatown's going to be Chinatown. They'll figure it out. They'll be all right. And I think there's this blind optimism from where they stand when they look at us, when they're 10 feet above or wherever in the ivory tower, and they're looking at Chinatown. I think they're they're just so disconnected from it, and because of that, it makes it hard for them to empathize and engage these problems to them when they're looking at a macro solution, and they may look at Chinatown as perhaps insignificant.
Yeah.
A micro problem.
Yeah. And that's why, man, I wish I knew this sooner, how much I should have been paying more attention to local politics.